Da, 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 da.
It's finally out, my friends! YelaWolf's Ghetto CowBoy, his first solo album since leaving Shady Records. After the lackluster Trunk Music 3, which really felt like a half-assed project just to end his deal with Shady, I was really skeptical of how good this album was going to be. And the only project that YelaWolf has put out that I haven't liked is Trunk Music 3. And I have listened to every single other project, from Creekwater all the way up to Ghetto CowBoy. Ghetto CowBoy was actually recorded in part alongside Trunk Music 3, which to me further proves that Yela was just pushing out an album to end his Shady deal so that he could put out something really good and quality as a solo artist. So, does this album actually feel like the YelaWolf project that us fans have been waiting for, that we perhaps didn't get with Trunk Music 3? Let's have a look at the songs on this album. This album is only 50 minutes long, which I would say is a perfect length for not being boring or, making you lose attention to the album, and it does have a nice variety of sounds to keep you entertained. So go grab a Pepsi, my friends, crack that bad boy open, and get ready to listen to an awesome album after you've watched my review. So the album opens with an excerpt of Sheila Wolf, who is YelaWolf's mum, talking about how she beat the hell out of some random guy in a parking lot, and she was having one of her friends there with a gun, and she was saying shoot him, and the police were called and she didn't care, and there's no context given to any of this. I would say it's a poor way to open the album off, especially for people who are new to YelaWolf and have no idea who Sheila is and his family backstory. I have a feeling that it may be a certain person who I've heard referenced by Sheila in the past, who she had a lot of issues with, but it really doesn't work. And then having Wolf yell, "Ghetto CowBoy!" at the end of the excerpt doesn't really help this feel like any more of an album intro. I can't say I'm going to have this track staying with the album for future listens. It just really doesn't add anything. I will delete this one from my playlist. You could kind of say that the intro that you just listened to leads into the next track, which is the first single from this album and the first track on the album, Unnatural Born Killer. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of this track. I've seen a video of LeBron James banging out to it, and it is 100% a cut above the tracks from Trunk Music 3, but honestly, it feels a little bit out of place on this album in terms of quality. I do feel like it would have been better off suited being on Trunk Music 3 as one of the more standout songs, but hey ho. For me, this is where the album begins. The second single for this album, O.P. Taylor. This feels like a really good mix between old school Trunk Music YelaWolf and the YelaWolf that was making Love Story and Trial by Fire. As someone who adores those two albums, I have to say this is one of my more favourite tracks on the album. It's nice to hear a non-braggadocious track about living a very carefree life come from a rapper in 2019. Sad to say, the Box Chevy Part 6 was one of the weaker tracks on Trunk Music 3. Despite a Ritz feature that should have brought back memories of the classic Box Chevy Part 3, but it really didn't hold up to any of the previous entries, minus Box Chevy 4. Box Chevy 7 does a much better job of fitting into this series that's been going since way before YelaWolf even had a real following. The mix of rapping and singing and the way Yela flows on this track works really well. It's delivered really well and feels like it sits alongside Box Chevy 2 and 5 with the way Yella sings and raps on this track, and those two are my favourite in the series. Here I Am is another track where Yella delivers on his promise of having something to please the hip-hop fans, the rock and roll fans, and the country fans alike. The track does lose me a fair bit when Yella spends a bit too much time just repeating, "I'll whoop this motherfucker's ass," for what feels like a solid minute. But it does mix the three genres that YelaWolf has worked with on his past projects, so overall it does have a nice flow and feel to the track overall. If the track just removed the two occasions where Yella completely kills the flow of the track to yell or whoop this motherfucker's ass, it would be a real banger of a track. Still Riding reminds me of a more hip-hop version of Ride or Die from Trial by Fire, but more about how YelaWolf came up and became who he is today, which is something which he talks about a lot. I really like the hook of, we went from counting O's in the SpaghettiOs to counting zeros in the loads. It's braggy, yes, but it's not in your face like most modern rappers would be if they were handling a subject like this. Tommy just got out of jail. This is another Ride or Die-esque track, and having Yella singing on the hook in between some sick-ass verses about him and his friends and the way they were living before the fame and wanting to achieve that fame makes for a track with an absolute perfect flow and a really great subject matter, which is something YelaWolf has always been great at. This track definitely stands out to me as one of the best songs on the album. It has great lyrics, a catchy hook, great flow and delivery, and doesn't have a single moment in which you're taken out of the track. It's also one of the longer tracks on the album, and it certainly earns its over 4-minute runtime that other songs on this album don't have. Okay, so I wasn't bothered when YelaWolf took Tennessee Love from Trunk Music 2 and put it on Love Story, because Tennessee Love is one of YelaWolf's best songs of all time, and the YouTube views on a fan-made video really reflect this fact. It is easily my favourite Yella song of all time. I felt the same way about this track coming onto this album. It's without a doubt the best song from Hotel, and I couldn't actually believe that Renegades wasn't already on an album. Then there's the edited version that changes the intro and the outro, the I got a gun for a mouth and a bullet with your name on it part, song that we've actually been given. All that is different about this track is that it's distorted and the pitch is shifted, which honestly, for a moment on your first listen, just takes you out of the mood of this album a little bit because it's just so different. And if you've already heard the original Renegades, it will really kind of throw you off. This was a change that really didn't need to happen at all. The track should have been left alone and it would have worked a lot better. Renegades is a sick track, and it's a shame that it's been edited in this way. 99 bottles of painkillers all gone. Once again, another track with a really great flow that you could just close your eyes to and listen to it. It does a good job of pleasing the part of the fan base that likes to hear YelaWolf sing, i.e. me, and makes sure that it fits into the rest of the album really well. There's not a whole lot to say about this track as a whole though. To get everything I wanted in this lifetime. Another track that will please the crowd that likes to hear Yella sing, but does quickly shift gears into some solid rap lines on verse 3. I do like it when Yella makes tracks about how his past was rough, but he always believed in his dream and worked hard to achieve everything that he has. Shit, I got a whole breakbeat collection from back. So the thing I disliked most on Trial by Fire was the Struggle Speaks track. that just stops the music and has Struggle Jennings giving some inspirational talk. This album pulls a similar fast one, but with DJ Paul talking about how no one else is making music like this, and Slum Mafia has been one of his favourite projects. While that's nice and all, I'm not really a fan of the music just abruptly stopping so that someone can talk to me about how they feel about the album and the music and the project. Just let me listen to it. This was the track I was most looking forward to coming into this album, and it 100% met my expectations. This track flows so well, has such a dope instrumental and a catchy hook that I could happily bang out to while I'm driving down a country road. There is a DJ Paul feature on this track, which I thought might take away from the feel of the song, but he actually manages to keep the feeling that YelaWolf sets up on this track, which isn't really a big surprise considering that he is a southern rapper who has made all kinds of different types of music and likes to experiment with the sounds he creates. DJ Paul fits really well onto this track, and it's so cool to see one of the pioneers of southern hip hop come to YelaWolf and join the Slamerican movement. This track opens up with Cook Up Boss on the first and second verse. Cook Up Boss isn't a rapper that I'm particularly keen on, to be honest. When it comes to people YelaWolf has had on Slamerican, I would say that Ritz, Big Henry, and Shorty Fat were all way better. But after the DJ Paul verse from the previous track, I feel like Cook Up Boss does well to keep that standard that DJ Paul sets as the first feature on the album going really well. He doesn't feel out of place or like he overstays his welcome despite having two verses on this song compared to YelaWolf's single verse. Yella comes in rapping about fake rappers and honestly provides a perfect ending for this track. Just props to Cook Up Boss for coming onto this track so strongly and so well. I would say that after this he has earned a spot in my head, not that he's ever going to care, as being up there with all of the other Slamerican artists. And for the final track of the album, Ghetto CowBoy. If you're going to name a song on the album, after the album itself, you best make sure that it is a fire track. Yella gives just that. This track makes for a brilliant ending for the album and sits strongly with all the other tracks from this album. My only criticism is Yella says motherfucker way too much on this track. I'm not someone who minds swearing at all, but there is a point where you do eventually just start to wince and go, okay, just tone it down a bit, dude. Other than that, great track and a fantastic ending to the album. So after that, I would say that this is a much better album than Trunk Music 3. There's only 2 features, which is already a huge improvement over TM3. Trunk Music 3 had way too many features on it that took away from Yella actually performing on the album. The songs were generally really weak entries that didn't feel like they belonged on a full-length studio album from YelaWolf. The promotional freestyles that he was putting out were all way better. But this album, this is where it's at. It doesn't quite sit with my favourite YelaWolf albums, those being Love Story and Trial by Fire, but this is certainly sitting at the higher end of all of his albums for being standout, really good quality, and something you could just put on at any given moment and enjoy. It is a culmination of all of the sounds that YelaWolf has been working with and evolving since he initially made Creekwater. I would say that this album is nearly 15 years in the making and is well worth a listen if you're a YelaWolf fan or even if you're not.